On
Zelensky
today's
a
podcast.
dictator. Okay, maybe he is and maybe he isn't. But if Zelensky is a dictator, I have trouble believing Putin's not. But then when they asked him, this week, is Putin a dictator? Refused to, say so. And the same with the second vote at the UN.
The truth is, adding value will never go out of style.
This podcast is brought to you by iWatch Security. iWatch Security. Get the savings and service that you deserve.
Hello, and thanks for joining us for another Five Things podcast. I'm here with a longtime friend, Rodney. We knew each other basically networking and got to know each other that way. You mind introducing yourself?
Sure, Brian, and thanks for having me here.
Sure.
My name is Rodney Taylor, and as you said, we met in 2015. I, at that time, owned Clubsy Tutoring Services. Clubsy in-home tutoring services at the time, and now due to pretty much COVID, it's called Clubsy Tutoring Services. I sold the business over a year ago, but to go back to who I am, I'm a native son of South Carolina, but I'm a North Carolina mutt. I've lived in Rocky Mount, Raleigh, Jacksonville, and Wilmington, where I got my bachelor's degree in communication studies. I've held several jobs over the years. My training was to be a print journalist, but things don't always work out the way you expect. I've been a loan officer, and now, since I no longer own Clubsy Tutoring, which was a great time, I did it for almost 8 years, and again, that is how we met. And basically what happened with that, long story short, after COVID, it was just hard to keep it going, and I decided to go out on a good note. Mm-hmm. And now I'm a clinical trial coordinator, which in plain English means I look at and evaluate and process documents for clinical drug studies.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. And the goal for us talking today, and I'll give a little background, but our goal is to just help foster maybe be the example of two guys having some conversations about some topics that we know going into it, we kind of see things differently. Mm-hmm. And so I say all the time, you might like mushrooms. I think they're disgusting. We can always agree to disagree. But
I do like mushrooms.
What's that?
I do like mushrooms.
Okay, well, all right. Well, there's our first disagreement of the day. But the one thing I'll say about Rodney is, I believe with all my heart you're a good human. And we've had conversations, and I believe that we generally both feel similarly about each other. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
no, same.
As a business guy, over the years, that things I've spoken up on, it's largely because I care about people and I care about the topic, and I think most of us, when we get heated about a topic, most of us have what we feel is for the well-being of society or citizens or people in general. Or animals or the climate or whatever it is. So I think a lot of these very heated conversations or political conversations, if you will, I think it gets a little heated with people. And I think, in my opinion, people just need to learn how to talk to each other instead of at each other. We were talking before we got on the podcast. It's easy to maybe you're having a bad day and you see something on Facebook or Twitter or X or whatever, and you get on there and you lambaste some guy that you kind of know that you used to be in networking with, and maybe that wasn't your best self, and we've probably all done that. But hopefully in the last 10 to 20 years, I think there's kind of been an acclimation. How old, you mind me asking how old you are?
Sure. I'm 48. Hopefully I don't look it.
Okay, no, you look great. That's what I was going to say. So I'm 50. So, generally speaking, when I was growing up, there's you don't talk politics at the dinner table with, politics, religion, if you go visit family, you don't talk about a handful of things. Well, now we all have the ability to talk to thousands of people every day. And so I think humanity in general is kind of getting reacclimated to having all this information and all these perspectives. And
instantly, I might add.
Instantly, yeah. When I remember exactly where I was when Kobe Bryant died. You found out, and that news hit the entire world in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wild when you think about that. Or when Joe Biden resigned, there was 444 million views on, I think it was X at the time. Yeah, it was X. 400 million views in this short window of time. So information spreads so quickly, which could be disinformation, misinformation, or valid information. So I think the goal is, and what I want to encourage everybody is, find someone you can have a respectful conversation with, and maybe have topics once in a while that you just go into it. We're gonna do it live on air, and I want to give Rodney lots of credit here. I've invited a lot of people to come on this podcast and talk about things that I may disagree with, and you're literally the first person that's accepted this invite.
I find that surprising, but going back to what you said, I think emotion does have a lot to do with it, because it's funny, the more emotional you get, and I remember I learned this back in school, the more emotional you get, the logic, the part of your brain that's responsible for logic, it stops, it's not functioning as effectively. And that's why, you know what the hardest job in the world, in my opinion, is? Funeral director. And it's not for the reasons you think. I talked to one, and after I spoke with him, he pointed out, it's not the bodies. There are plenty of, law enforcement, medical. You can get used to cadavers. But what struck me is, he said, the hardest part of the job is you're always dealing with people at their worst.
I can see that.
90% of his clients are grief-stricken, and when they do something, like we've talked about, most of our clients are awesome, but you've got that 1 out of 20 that's going to give you a hard time. And a lot of times you're like, okay, they're just off or whatnot. But if someone's emotional, especially if they have a just cause to be emotional because someone just died, you can't argue with someone in that situation. Sure. You've lost before you started, and that's the problem with emotion.
Yeah, I can see that being a super tough gig for sure.
That's why I think we have good conversations, because we know how to, it's not that we don't have emotion with the topics we're talking about, but we know how to separate that from, it's like, okay, let's keep it civil.
And here's the other thing. I don't think this will happen, but let's say we did get a little amped up about something, right? We can always just take a break and laugh about it. Like, okay, we were getting a little heated there, So
yeah.
That being said, I don't anticipate that, because I think we're both pretty laid back. But I do feel that we have opinions, and I do feel that we care about society. And so, any case, long story short, we picked up 5 or 6 things a piece we sent to each other ahead of time. So there's no gotcha here. We're not trying to make each other look stupid or there's no games. We're going to talk about clickbait. We're going to talk about a lot of these things that we all have made mistakes. I've shared something that was inaccurate before. And the goal is to try to get to the truth. I think we all deserve truth. And we all deserve the factual information. So anyway, we'll just jump into number 1 here.
Okay.
And so this is something that Rodney sent to me. Of course, there was going into this is about Ukraine. And, the spat heard around the world in the White House with Zelensky and Vance and Trump yesterday. And, of course, it's amazing seeing all the different opinions about that and how people see and interpret that. But basically, this is basically the U.S. sides with Russia in U.S. resolutions on the invasion of Ukraine. So we're going to listen to this, and here we go. Let me turn this up here. So this is on BBC News. It's about 35 seconds here, I believe.
The result of the vote is as follows. In favor, 93, against 8, abstention 73. Draft resolution A/ES11/L11 as amended is adopted.
So ultimately, my initial thoughts on this, my initial thought is, number one, I can't stand when people abstain from a vote. It's so political. There's a delegation there. You're there to vote on something. So you may not like something, but you should be voting on it, or UN, their ambassador, whoever there's voting on this, they should have a vote. So secondly, the U.S. sides with Russia. my thought on that is my first overall thought when I first saw this, when you sent it to me, is why are we doing this now? That was my first thought. This war's been going on for 3 years. And so suddenly Trump's in charge. Trump's trying to work out a peace deal. He's actively campaigned on that. I believe this will get worked out in the next 30 days, actually, even after yesterday's blow up, which we both want to talk about. But the fact that this is being done now, to me, it's 100% political. It's not about us siding with Russia. It's about framing the conversation that Trump is Putin's puppet, or that we're soft on Russia, or that, somehow we don't have Ukraine people's interest in mind here. I think that this probably would have hurt Trump and Putin negotiations if we sided with Ukraine. And again, it's one of these things. So we're doing this 3 years after the fact, and to me it has everything to do with who's in office now versus who was in office. And I don't think at the end of the day this is going to make a difference one way or another. I think it's a media thing. I think it just frames the conversation. It allows those talking points to continue that somehow Trump is a puppet of Putin, which I actually believe is the exact opposite. Putin invaded Crimea under Obama. He invaded Georgia under Bush. He took a 4-year break when Trump was in charge, and then he invaded Ukraine when Biden was in charge. So I actually think it's the exact opposite. I think that Putin understands Trump, like him or not. He's very strong, and he does have a big ego. I mean, we can all agree with that, I think.
Yeah.
And that he's going to, if anything, he's going to overreact to show strength. And we can go back to Kim Jong-un when he was, threatening to blow up Guam or all this kind of stuff back in 2016. And Trump had some really harsh words on Twitter back then, of all places, right? And then he's like, I will basically wipe your country off the map, to that effect. I don't remember the exact words. But then that led to them, being there together, and first U.S. president to be in North Korea in, I don't know, 100 years or 70 years, whatever it was. So it actually led to peace by showing that strength. So those are my initial thoughts on that. And I certainly don't think that countries should be invading other countries. I also personally believe NATO wants this war with Russia. I personally believe that. I don't think we're out there. I don't think there's defense. These are defensive things. I think we have contributed, whether it's blowing up a pipeline or when Kamala Harris went over there and said, we want Ukraine to be part of the UN. That's literally when he invaded, right after that. And so I think we've done things to contribute as a country. The United States bureaucrats have done things to contribute to this war. I think that NATO is pushing for this war for whatever reason. Maybe it's the military-industrial complex. Maybe it's something else. That's my opinion, is that I think NATO is actually working against Trump right now. Anyway, those are my initial thoughts. Go ahead. I don't want to hog the mic the whole time.
No, before I start on my thoughts, you said, and that's not a perspective I've heard before, so I'm interested in it. You said you think NATO's pushing for a war with Russia. And you said it sounds like you're not sure on the reason, but do you have any thoughts? Do you mind if I ask why?
Well, I just think there's probably lots of interest that we may or may not be aware of. I mean, the World Economic Forum was kind of like a conspiracy theory at one point. We all know it's very real now. We all know that there's an agenda that those people push down through large bureaucratic organizations, whether it's the WHO, whether it's politicians. So, the one thing that I specifically remember is that early on, it looked like there would be a peace deal that Zelensky was getting ready to sign with Putin. And essentially, Boris Johnson from the UK essentially goes over there and helps nix that deal. And then, of course, we contributed back then. I want to say this was 2021. now we're funding, and we're sending cluster bombs, which were, a thing we shouldn't have done at one point. Now it's a good thing that we're sending. Then we're sending, we've got the ICBMs that we were launching into, that Ukraine was launching into the Russia. Those are our missiles. They're operated by our people. So we essentially have a proxy war going on. The other thing is the Ukraine was overthrown. The real democracy was overthrown in 2014, largely with our involvement. And we got rid of the former person. And again, we both acknowledge, and we wanted to say this, we both acknowledge we're not experts on topics, right?
Yes.
And so I have a perspective of information that I've heard. It's like, when I think about, the question was, why do I think NATO would want this war? Maybe it's the military-industrial complex influence on all these politicians. The thing that, because we were talking about critical thinking as well, is, well, let me ask you this. Since the war started, how many UN delegations or how many times did the Biden administration go to Russia? How many peace talks did we have? I'm not aware of any.
No, it was basically more about helping Ukraine, which, okay, let's get into my thoughts on it.
Okay.
This wasn't captured in the video, and I disagree with you slightly on, you said, you don't like it when countries abstain, and in general, that's right. But I think if there's a conflict of interest or there's a good reason, abstaining is fine. And this would have been a good time for the U.S. to abstain because Trump wants to be a mediator between the countries. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. He could have done that by abstaining. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why we had to take Russia's side. It's, it throws things off. If you want to bring people together, do it from the middle, not pushing from one side.
I can see that point of view.
So in any case, the thing I latched on to the most when I heard this, I read the article and, looked at it from other sources, was Trump trying to blame Ukraine for starting the war. Now, he walked that back. And that by itself is something, because he very rarely, retracts anything he says, but literally the whole world was against him because this didn't happen 30 years ago. This happened 3 years ago, and we all saw what happened. Just 30-second recap. Ukraine was minding its own business. And again, not saying that Zelensky is an angel or anything, but bottom line, it's a sovereign country. Putin surrounded it with troops, and the world was like, hey, what are you doing? And he said, oh, just training exercises. Then he pushed for an invasion, was hoping for a quick snatch and grab. And Ukraine basically said, not today, Satan. And they've been fighting ever since. So yeah, that's how I feel. That's how I feel about that. I hope that's succinct.
Yeah, the one thing, I personally don't believe Ukraine was minding its own business. So, for example, there was the story that came out about how the United States had all these biolabs in Ukraine, and it was disinformation and this and that. Then they had to walk it back and say that well, there are, I think the number's 28 biolabs in Ukraine that the United States has. And first off, do we really need more biolabs around the world with everything that we've been through the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, good point.
That's number one. The other thing was, there's a long-standing agreement between, I want to say it was Boris Yeltsin and George Bush Sr. So when the Soviet Union fell, and they were kind of working their way to coming back up, there was a long-standing agreement that Ukraine would never be part of NATO. These countries that surround Russia would not become part of NATO to where it could be an offensive. When you look at Ukraine, you're close to Moscow, So the fact that we were, I think if you took a deep dive into Ukraine, I believe, these are my beliefs, I believe we contributed to a coup in 2014 to overthrow the democratically elected person there. I believe that Ukraine is kind of a proxy state for our military-industrial complex. There were defensive weapons, according to the media, there that Patriot missile systems and things like that, they can be converted to offensive pretty quickly. And then these biolabs. And the way I think about this is like, go back to the Cuban Missile Crisis. We're not going to let missiles be right on our border.
Right.
If Russia had 28 biolabs on our border in Mexico, I'm going to venture to say we'd have a problem with that. So I do think that again, I love my country, but I don't think we're the good guys in all these scenarios anymore. Matter of fact, there's growing evidence that we're not the good guys in a lot of scenarios, and that makes me mad and it makes me sad all at the same time, because I would love my country to be a country that does the right thing. And I think we and NATO have contributed to a lot of the conflict there. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when Kamala said to the world, and I'm not picking on Kamala specifically, even though I don't like her. I don't think she's, anyway, I think that when she stood up there as the vice president of the United States and said, we want Ukraine to be in NATO, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. In my mind, the clock started ticking, because Putin said, I'm not going to let that happen. I'm going to go in here and jack them up before they're part of NATO. And I think that created the urgency to cause him to strike. I'm not saying he was right to do it. I'm not saying that there wasn't other alternatives. But from what little I've heard from Putin, my understanding is he would have been open to lots of negotiations. And I just don't think our military-industrial complex that props up the Western world, really. We were funding, 80% of NATO or something like that. So
at one time, yeah.
Something like that. So that being said, I think with anything, it's probably much more complex than any of us can imagine. You've got these agendas from all these different countries, whether it's Putin, whether it's United States, whether it's Ukraine. And I just think that there needs to be a free flow of information from a absolutely free and true press, which we know USAID now was funding 90% of Ukraine's media over there. That's some of the information that I've seen. And I believe it to be credible. It makes sense to me. It's funding all kinds of stuff all over the world that I'm not happy about. So that's my thought on the whole situation, is that I felt like it was a show. And it's, so much of what we're seeing is show from both sides. I'm not saying it's one side's doing that and the other side is righteous. I just don't believe that's the case. But I believe we need to be able to. We were talking about this because you went to school for journalism. You've got a background, and you were an aspiring journalist at one point, and we were talking about ethics.
Yeah.
And we'll just go into the 60 Minutes thing. I used to think so highly of 60 Minutes. And then I've seen several things over the last, let's say, 5 years to where they could run a good story now, and they've lost credibility in my mind. Two things that we already spoke about, but I'll say this on video. When Leslie Stahl, I think the name is, she was interviewing Trump during 2020 election, and she's basically adamant, we don't have any evidence of the Hunter Biden laptop. To me, that was willful negligence. The FBI had the laptop in 2019. That was easily verifiable had they chosen to look into it. Matter of fact, when you look at the full exchange between Leslie and Trump, they edited out a bunch of what he said. And again, there's editing. You have to edit to make that probably fit the segment, right? So some of that's creative, some of that's for time, but some of that's for agenda in my mind. And when you look at how there's no other way to say this, how they completely deceptively edited Kamala's interview. And if I'm not mistaken, there's an open lawsuit on that Trump has against 60 Minutes or the network that did that for election interference. So we've got to have a free press. And my favorite way of debunking all kinds of garbage, which we both agree, there's all kinds of spewing garbage and disinformation. I love X. There's community notes. And there's something that goes up there. I saw something the other day that, again, this is not that we have sides, but let's say your side for a lack of a better term. I want to say this was a congressman that said this too, that said Democrats voted against the minimum wage. And it was something to that effect. And I'm like, I wasn't under the impression that was in this most recent bill. And so I went over to X and I saw the community notes basically debunking that claim. And so that's something that's maybe that person shared that. I just tell you, maybe they shared it and they thought it was accurate, but they should retract it. If you knowingly are sharing something that's fake, you're part of the problem.
But yeah, clickbait is a huge problem, and that's what it comes down to. That's a whole nother subject. Yeah, you just covered a lot, so I'll try it. But yeah, and I want to hit. I've made a note. It'd be good to go back to that later. But going back to Ukraine, yeah. Long story short, which again, and I didn't know about the biolabs, so I will do my research on that.
Okay.
But long story short, either they are our ally or not. That's what it comes down to. And Putin, I'm not, like you said, maybe he had cause to do it, but A, he shouldn't have invaded, and B, it shouldn't have gone this long. He's going with the Russian strategy of just send wave after wave of guys until we win. And Ukraine, at least the way they see it, they are defending their home. Russia's troops have low morale. One of their problems is low morale because they're not feeling it, and I don't blame them. He's having to, lean on his people and force them to do it, and that's a big problem. That's why I have a problem with the fact that Trump called Zelensky a dictator. Okay, maybe he is and maybe he isn't. Zelensky is a dictator. I have trouble believing Putin's not. Mm-hmm. But then when they asked him, this week, is Putin a dictator? Refused to, say so. And the same with the second vote at the UN. The U.S. drafted let's draft a version where we don't come down on Russia for being the aggressor. I don't care how you justify it. I don't care if bottom line, yes, they started it. That's black and white. They are the one. Side A invaded side B. That's not up for debate. Clicked on the article and I saw, the headline. I said, okay, you know what? But and I'm proud of myself for this. Before I started reading the comments and everything, I said, okay, I can actually watch the video. Let me just watch the video.
Sure.
So I got through 4 or 5 minutes of it and I turned it off. I couldn't stomach the whole thing. And later I watched the intro. I'm putting the blame at this 90% on Trump's feet. And here's why. The second he showed up, I don't know if you've seen it yet. When he showed up and shook his hand, the first thing he said
insulted him about how he's dressed.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to start off by mocking the guy.
Mm-hmm. I didn't like that either, to be honest.
And the next thing I saw was in their office, and then a guy on the side is asking about it. It's like, is this really what's important right now? Can we move on? But from the start, it was so poorly handled. I do have to wonder if it was sabotage. And before I read anything, I thought that to myself. And here's why: from the start, they did 2 things wrong. And at this point, I was going on the fact that the talk was in good faith. But one, he's outnumbered 2-1. Why was Vance there? This should be a talk between 2 presidents. And 2, why is this being televised at all? I understand the need for transparency. That's fine and good. But the public understands, or at least should understand, some talks need to happen behind closed doors.
Well, don't you think that was Vance's kind of perspective? Like he was talking about, you want to litigate this in front of the American people. To me, that was Vance saying, I can't believe you're bringing this up in front of all the cameras.
Okay, so my question...
That was my take on that.
And my question on that is this, and I haven't gotten an answer on it, so maybe I'm wrong. But wanting to be in front of the cameras, that sounds more like a Trump thing. Again, I have not verified that.
Sure. But
I have to wonder, whose idea was it to have the cameras in the first place? I would think, remember... I'm dating myself, but we're about the same age. Mm-hmm. Remember Reagan and Gorbachev? Mm-hmm. Now, granted, again, that was long before the internet.
Sure.
But we heard the results of those talks for the most part.
Right.
And we don't need to see what's going on. In my opinion, what needs to happen in a talk like that, it needs to happen behind closed doors between the presidents off camera, so that if necessary, they can both lay their cards on the table. Trump is the one who said you don't have the cards, and I did not like the way they were tag teaming him and attacking him. They kept interrupting him. That's Trump being Trump. I'm sorry to say. Remember the Biden and Trump debate where it turned into a shouting match? Mm-hmm. It was that all over again. Mm-hmm. But I'm on a podcast right now. There's a certain zone I'm not going to go into because I understand I'm being recorded. I can't do Brian, just between you and me. No, I'm going to conduct myself a certain way. Mm-hmm. But if you're trying to end a war, we need every tool. We need all the help we can get. They should have done everything they could to make him comfortable. They didn't do that. They did everything they could to... It seemed to me like they were harassing and attacking him. And after the first 2 minutes, I I knew, okay, no wonder this didn't work out. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts on that are I've heard lots of commentary from Trump about this, even prior to this meeting, that Zelensky is not really cooperating. You know, we are getting engaged to try to bring peace to this scenario. And I've heard nothing but kind of negative things. And this is, to me, and again, this is my opinion, I feel like NATO's behind this, pushing to keep this conflict going, whereas they had someone that cooperated in the White House recently that was cooperating towards escalating this event versus de-escalating. And I think what we have now is you have the United States is trying to de-escalate, and NATO is trying to escalate it. Now, I personally believe Zelensky's gotten rich from this. There's been countless stories about Ukraine's and fraud and corruption. We know they don't account for the money that goes over there. Zelensky's on video saying in the last 2 weeks that, you know, the United States says they sent 177 billion, but we've only received 75 or something like that.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
So, you know what? This comes back to, like it or not, Trump won the election, and one of his big platforms was America First. Mm-hmm. If he just wanted to back out and say, Ukraine, you're on your own, I wouldn't like it, but okay, that's right in line with what we said we were going to do. Mm-hmm. But I can't get behind, you know, dragging him over here and basically embarrassing him on camera and basically treating it like a reality show. That's what I saw yesterday.
Well, coming back to something you said, it's like we're supposed to make him feel comfortable. I think it's the exact opposite. We don't need you. You need us. We've given them all this taxpayer money. We've given them weapons. We've given them F-16s. We've done all this stuff for them. He needs to make us feel comfortable. That's how I look at it. We're the one bringing the assistance. If I'm a business owner and I'm in trouble financially and I need help from the bank, it's not their job to make me feel comfortable. I need to make them feel comfortable investing in me. So we let's just say we see that a little bit differently. Now, of course, an excellent statesman is going to want to make everybody feel comfortable and get the most cooperation from everybody. I'm sure
if you want to reach if you want to reach some kind of agreement, yeah.
Sure.
If bottom line, every inch of, I mean, if you look at him, his body language is screaming he's not comfortable.
You're talking about Zelensky?
Zelensky,
Okay.
Yeah. It's, you know, he's basically just sitting there and taking it, you know, while, you know, Trump and Vance are talking and talking. I get the ultimate goal is, again, one way or another. We're kind of at the point, this has been going on 3 years. It's costing a lot of money. We're almost at the point of, I don't care who started it. Let's just end it.
Well, and more importantly, hundreds of thousands of lives.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so let's get, I get that. That's why going back to, if we had abstained, I'd understand. If the real goal is let's just get this to an end, then don't take a side. Don't talk to him like he's, you know, a teenager who hasn't cleaned his room. You know, you catch more flies with honey. Try, you know, talking to him like a fellow president.
Well, I guess I can see the case made for that to an extent. I still believe this is going to be resolved in probably, let's see, it's March
days?
1st. I believe within the next 30 days there's going to be a deal.
I hope so.
It wouldn't surprise me. I hate to say this because I just briefly saw something this morning about the Ukrainian parliament's trying to impeach Zelensky now. And who knows what's going on. It was just something I briefly saw, so I don't know if that's 100% accurate. I don't want to spread misinformation or disinformation, but to me, it's one of those things where I agree with what Trump said. And, you know, like Trump or not, he had 25,000 employees when he started running for president. The guy had 500 corporations. You know, he literally wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. I think I got it in here. But that being said, you know, I just give him benefit of the doubt. This is kind of his wheelhouse. He's trying to find peace here. And I do agree with what Trump says. It's like being a poker player, Rodney, that I am. I love poker. You know, if I'm holding 2-7 and I'm trying to play it like I've got pocket aces, it's a dangerous game. And that's how I feel Zelensky's dealing with this is I feel Zelensky's probably caught in between lots of pressures, of course. I mean, he's in a very tough spot. I mean, I think we all can agree with that. I just think when Trump said he's not holding any cards, and he's really not. He won't survive. His country won't survive. He'll survive. He'll end up in some foreign country with lots of money. He's going to be fine one way or another, in my opinion. It's Ukraine. It's the people there. It's all of that. That if we can help them get out of this bad situation,
that again, and the people, not taking Zelensky and Putin out of it for a second.
The country.
Yeah. They just want to live their lives and not be attacked.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And I do not like the thought of siding with, or I don't like the thought of Russia getting away with it, but I can swallow it for the sake of saving lives and this coming to an end. But throwing in with, Russia and the United States don't have a good history itself. Mm-hmm. But anyway, bottom line, and Zelensky, he stuck it out 3 years. If he was going to, run away, and I hadn't heard about the impeach thing. We'll both do our research on that.
We'll see if that's actually real or not.
Yeah, but bottom line, yeah, he does. He's not. Long story short, Ukraine can't beat Russia. They can't.
Right.
And the only reason they've lasted this long is because help from NATO
and the United States.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now I understand from a pragmatic standpoint, we can't us trying to outlast Russia is going to take forever and a lot of loss of life. We're looking for an alternative. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like who wins if this keeps going on? Let's look at that. Who wins? The military-industrial complex. Who won when we invaded over weapons of mass destruction and there was nothing there or very little? The military-industrial complex won.
And Putin, because overall, it's turned into a war of attrition. If it's a war of attrition, he's going to win. He has the numbers and the size.
Right.
So
that being said, I think we can agree on several things. We should want peace in this scenario.
Right.
We should find the best situation we can for the Ukrainian people and the Russians. I mean, they're going to get what they want. They're actually in a position of power right now.
Right or wrong.
Whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
And anybody that's not working towards peace in the region, I have to question their motives. And that's my point of view. It's like, we should be working towards peace. And I want every country to have the best situation they can and just live free and prosper.
Yeah, and at one point, one thing I read was there was a proposal. Zelensky, if you step down, blah blah blah. At this point, yeah, if that will bring peace, it's not about you step down. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, and I do believe it's going to end in 30 days. Now, here's the other side. Let's put ourselves in Putin's shoes right now. Okay. I am ready to get super aggressive now. You don't have the backing of the president of the United States. You don't have. And there's lots of politicians that came out and were talking about how disrespectful, like Lindsey Graham, who I'm definitely not a fan of, but he was talking about how disrespectful it was to be in the White House, like litigating things in front of them. So you have people like that let's say that you've lost the backing of the United States and you're Putin. Now you're holding even more cards. So Zelensky to me is the one that if you have to have tough conversations, don't have him in front of the camera. The only person that loses in that scenario is him.
I agree. And that's why I wonder whose idea that was.
Well, and that's where, let's say it was our idea and we wanted to make him look bad. I actually don't, I don't believe that was the case because I think Trump wants to end this thing. I really believe that. Do you believe that?
I believe Trump is so blinded by his ego and the desire to be the center of attention, he misses some things.
Do you believe he wants to end the war in Ukraine?
Yeah. Long story short, yeah, it's
it's just to satisfy his own ego.
Yeah, it's the war going on doesn't help him or us in any way.
Okay, so with that in mind, I don't think it helps his position to weaken the position of Ukraine. It actually hurts his own position to weaken Ukraine. The way you get a deal done is Russia's got to feel like they've got to come to the table. If they don't feel like they have to come to the table, then they can just do what they want. So by making Ukraine weaker, it actually brings him to the table less. And Donald Trump's smart enough to know that's not a good strategy. So even if we thought he wants to end the war to do nothing but beat his own chest about how great he is, I don't think that's the case, but a lot of people will say that, right? that doesn't help his position, and he knows that. And so I think he was probably very pissed off and angry about the way all that exploded yesterday. If I had to take a guess, that's my perspective. I could be wrong.
Maybe.
So that was one meme.
Yep.
I told you this was going to take a while.
You did.
Paul last week, he told me, like, we're going to talk about this for a long time. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's only, 10 things.
So moving on to the next.
So we're going to jump into the next thing. The $2 billion in gold bars sent from EPA to Abrams-linked climate organization. Number one, I'm not a fan of Stacey Abrams, who's basically an election denier. I mean, that's a term that loves to get thrown around. I didn't dig into her connection into this. What I felt was more important about this is I did go look this community organization up, or climate organization, whatever it's called. So this is a grant from the EPA. We're talking $20 billion. Now, in government spending, that's not a lot of money. But to you and I, Rodney, to people in Western North Carolina,
$20 million is $20 million.
Well, this is billion with a B.
Oh, sorry.
This is $20 billion.
Even more so.
So when you go to this Power Forward Communities, and I don't know if you've done this, but essentially, when I go to their website, Rodney, this looks like a $6 one-page website. When you're getting $2 billion from the taxpayers to something to do with, climate change or this and that, to me, this looks like exactly the type of fraud, waste, corruption. This, to me, is one of the poster childs of why we need an organization like Doge or not. I mean, it's such a hot topic. We should all want the government to be more responsible with our money, more efficient with our money. And I'll tell you what, when I look this website up, this one-page website, to me, this looks ridiculous to me. This doesn't look like they've done anything other than receive money from the taxpayers.
And I've seen that before, and that burns me up because it's like at least tell me a good lie. Yeah. And in a way, this is very straightforward. I'm right behind you. There's government waste, particularly, and I try not to take sides like you, but gun to my head, I'll admit I more often than not, I probably fall on the liberal side more than the conservative side. But one reason I can't get down with being a Democrat, they are dysfunctional and disorganized and wasteful. So,
well, let's just say this. I mean, it sounds like we agree, right? I think that government waste, fraud, and corruption is bad. I mean, we can agree.
Yeah.
Let's say that maybe we can agree that there hasn't been a lot done in the last 10 or 20 years to check our corruption, waste, fraud.
Yes.
From that I've seen.
Yes. But, and I'm going to do two buts here. Uh-huh. But by all means, hold it accountable. Do an investigation. See, basically ask, okay, you've had this money for this amount of time. What'd you do with it?
Well, they actually cut off so it was a grant that was received last year, but they stopped the money from going.
Okay. What did they do with the money they've gotten?
In the past. If they received money in the past.
Okay.
Right.
But long story short, show me show me your work.
Sure.
But also, and the issue with climate change, and here's, why I can't ever get down with Republicans, because it takes forever to convince them. If something inconvenient for them pops up, they will deny it, and then when they can't do that, they will, they'll downplay it, and then when that doesn't work, deflect, distract, delay, anything but, God forbid, make a change. Climate change, unfortunately, is one of those problems. It took forever to convince people that it was real, let alone what to do about it, and that's where we are now. It's like most people accept to some degree, because California is basically on fire and the hurricanes are stronger. Okay, you know what? There's enough of a pattern here. We agree something's going on. What do we do about it? And no one has a clear answer. And I don't know if there is a clear answer. But bottom line, the problem with climate change is it's one of those things that's easy to put on the back burner because look at all the stuff happening now. We've got bigger problems. We'll always have bigger problems. So I think one of the problems with something like this is when we find out what they've been doing with the money, it'll be, oh, well, you put it in this preventative measure that doesn't do anything. And that's, again, that's my fear. What's going to happen there is then they'll say, well, this is just a waste of time. But again, let's see what they did with the money first before we say anything.
Sure. And what I suspect here, without going into climate change stuff, what I suspect here with this organization is we're never going to hear anything. And that's where coming back to journalism and a free press and those type of things. I don't care whether it's a Republican invasion with weapons of mass destruction that turned out to be a lie, and in my opinion, a lie. Certainly wrong at this point. I think we all can agree with that. I don't care if it's a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat. I want to know that we have people. Journalism are the watchdogs of the government. They're supposed to expose. They're supposed to be, yeah. It's supposed to expose wrongdoing. And when you expose the wrongdoing of one person or one group consistently, now it becomes, wait a minute, this is, I'll give you an example. Where in the Constitution can a president kill a United States citizen?
Where can they kill a United States citizen?
Right. Without a trial or anything. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. I was like to say, going back to social studies, and that was my knee-jerk reaction, but the law being the law, I'm wondering, okay, am I missing something? But go on.
Well, that's the thing is, like, I'm certainly under the impression that a president just can't deem Brian Smith a threat to the United States and take me out, or Rodney or Mustafa or whoever.
I hope not.
So, but it's happened before. You know, Barack Obama did a drone strike on a terrorist who's a United States citizen in a foreign country and his 16-year-old son, if I'm not mistaken. And again, it's one of those things where the average person doesn't know that. We can all look it up and get the name, and I'm not even saying he wasn't a terrorist. What I'm saying is, wait a second, that seems like a huge overreach of power and authority that's granted to someone. If Trump does that to someone, I will be the first person to say, I think that's completely wrong. However, the precedent's been set. And I think it's a horrible precedent. And maybe it was done prior to Barack Obama. I know that one instance. And my point of view is, if you're a United States citizen, and I'd love to see us get away from all these drone strikes all over the world anyway. That's a whole nother probably hour-long podcast we could get into. But, you know, if you're a United States citizen, you deserve a trial. You deserve a jury of your peers. You deserve to have your day in court and not just be randomly killed from afar by a bomb.
I don't know all the details of that situation, but I can see one possible complication there is if he's, you know, in another country and you can't extract him. And that's what happened with Edward Snowden, but we didn't kill him. So
yeah, well, Mike Pompeo, a Republican, he wanted to.
Yeah, but that's a no-no.
Which I would say, Mike Pompeo, I think you're completely wrong. That's where government goes crazy. That's where you've outgrown your britches and we got to rein you back in. You don't have the authority to do that. I don't care if you're running the CIA, FBI, president, whatever. You do not have the right to kill an American citizen without a trial and a jury. That's all there is to it. And I think we have to, coming back to principles, I don't care if it's Obama or Pompeo. I don't care what your party is. I care about the principle. You know, we either respect the Constitution and the rule of law or we don't. Okay. And so how in the world did we get off on that tangent? What were we talking about?
We started with you started with journalism and holding people accountable,
right.
And then we went into Doge, and then we kind of went off on a tangent.
And so wrapping up the gold bars thing here, and then I think we probably have to take a break on the camera. But wrapping up the gold bar is, I suspect we're never going to hear anything else about this.
And that'll be
$20 billion.
Then snip. I'm right behind you. Cut their funding. Those are our tax dollars, and you owe us an explanation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And it doesn't matter who got the money or for what. It's like
I agree.
You know, we're going to go into some of this other stuff.
And if she did, and if she is fraudulent, you know,
hold her accountable.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, quick break. All right, so moving on to our next meme. This is one Rodney sent me, and I'm going to look it over here. And this is from the White House, apparently. Congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king, President Donald Trump. So is this something that the White House actually posted? Because I haven't, just to be fair, I haven't looked this up on X. Is this an actual post from the White House?
I believe so.
Okay. So my first thing I'd want to do is maybe pause this and let's go look at the actual post.
Okay.
So we're going to pause this real quick, Mustafa. So we found this, and this is an actual thing. So we actually did what we're preaching.
Yes.
You know, go investigate stuff because we've both seen fake stuff like this. So yeah, they posted this. Congestion pricing is dead, which Rodney told me. I really don't know as much about this as apparently you've looked into it, but New York was going to impose a tax on congestion.
I can't remember if they did or didn't, but that's what that's
Okay.
about. And he's basically stepped in. And I'm not sure that it's been resolved, but that's what he's talking about is what I can tell you.
Well, first off, I agree with you. I don't like to see long live the king. We don't have kings here.
Thank you.
I'm not subject to a king. We don't do kings here. We left kings. We kicked the king's ass. We kicked his armies, and we formed the republic known as the United States. So I don't like the image of this. I think it's done in poor taste. I think you're feeding right into a bunch of narratives that I don't really agree with. But you brought this on yourself. This is a L. This is, as far as I'm concerned, this is, Pam Bondi took an L here recently with the Epstein Phase 1 release. There's all this hype about all this information coming out, and it was basically stuff most people already knew. That was an L. That's a loss. And I want to be able to call balls and strikes with people that I like just as well as with people that I don't like. So we're in agreement on this.
And I've so let me try a real word. I've always respected you for that. But more than an L, this is a big, I've got some thoughts on this. Here we go. I'll try and be succinct. This is a big problem. And here's why. First of all, it adds hostility. We all know either you love Trump or you hate him. There's not a lot of room in between. But there are a lot of people concerned about what's going on right now because there's a lot happening, in my opinion, way too fast. But this adds tension and hostility to an environment which already has way too much of both. Mm-hmm. And furthermore, people are worried, justified or not. Here's the big worry that a lot of people have, including myself. We don't have a king because we have a president, and we have checks. We have the Constitution and checks and balances. So you can't just do what you want,
right.
And that's the whole thing going on with Doge right now. Let's talk about that for a second. The whole Elon Musk thing, and him demanding emails. And from your post, it sounds like you support that. I don't, and here's why. Basically, if I were in their position, I would be refusing too. Now, the Secretary of Defense, I understand this week said you have to do it. That's a whole nother topic. Just going back to what happened. First of all, Elon Musk has lots of power, but he has no authority. The Constitution says the president can hire people, but they have to be approved by the Senate. Has Elon Musk been approved by the Senate? No.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Then he's not hired. He can be an advisor, fine. The president can get advice from whoever he wants.
Sure.
He can get advice from a fortune teller reading tea leaves. But if that fortune teller kicks in your door and says, hey, justify your job to me or you're fired, you're not going to give him an explanation. You're going to give him the finger. Furthermore, Elon Musk is the wrong guy for that job. And here's why. He's literally the richest guy in the world. And without getting into it too much, everyone's worried about, everyone keeps talking about the billionaire tax thing, and that's a whole other topic. But bottom line, I happen to know Elon Musk has sidestepped paying well over $2 billion in taxes. If you want to help if you want to put money in the coffers, do what the rest of us do, make the same sacrifice. But instead, you'd rather upend hundreds, if not thousands of people's lives, in the name of, well, I'm doing it to help. So I don't blame those people. Again, if they're looking to sort out, and it needs to be done, there's waste that needs to be uncovered. Fine. I agree with the idea, but the way they're going about it is completely wrong, and I don't blame these people for resisting. And you can pick up.
Okay. Well, I think Elon Musk is obviously not approved by the Senate, or I say obviously, I don't believe he is. I don't think it's an official appointment. He's a special employee or what have you, whatever designation they have. My understanding is Doge has actually taken over an existing organization within the government. So Doge.gov, when I go to their website, they're an official organization. And I can't tell you if they're getting emails directly from Elon Musk. I wouldn't think that's the case. It's probably some automatic thing that's going out. So it's not necessarily from Musk. It's probably from Doge. That would be my guess. If I'm not mistaken, I think Elon Musk paid the most taxes at one time in human history. If I'm not mistaken, he's literally the guy that paid like $11 billion check or something.
When was that?
Let me, and again, let's fact check ourselves. Who is the American citizen that has paid the most taxes in history? Google. Elon Musk says he's the largest individual taxpayer in history after a $10 billion payment. I thought the IRS would send me a trophy. So that was November 14th, 2024. So he made a $10 billion tax payment. Well, and that's just Google. So
yeah. You said he says he did, but that can be. We should be able to verify that. But bottom line is proportionate. So if he's paying the same tax cut as me, great. But it sounds like that's not what's happening. But again, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. So coming back to the Doge stuff, what were you talking about specifically?
I was basically saying we're going back to the meme of Donald Trump being a king. Here's my point.
Yeah.
What people see happening, what has people worried, is that he's passing his power off to someone else and saying, "Oh, just do what he says, like he's me." That's not how it works. The president can only pass his power off to the vice president in a very specific set of circumstances outlined in the 25th Amendment. Beyond that, you can't just say, you can't send people in like the Gestapo to do whatever you want. We have a process in this country.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things I think about when I hear that is that a lot of the people that control our lives every day with policies and bureaucrats and all that, we didn't elect them either.
Fair.
They're appointed. And the people that are concerned about Donald Trump, being a king, when the Supreme Court told Biden he couldn't forgive student debt and then he did it anyway, were they concerned then? So there's lots of coming back to principles. It's like when the Supreme Court ruled on something and Biden's was like, F it, I'm going to do it anyway. If you wanted your student debt relieved, you were probably glad to hear that. But the principle is, wait a minute, can just presidents do anything they want now? Obama, coming back to the Obama drone strike, can presidents just do what they want now? So I think in principle we agree. Presidents have a certain amount of power. They're checked by Congress and the Senate. They're checked by the Supreme Court. This comes back into something else I'm sure we're going to get into, immigration law. Can we just create laws that let people flood into the country while violating law? We're either for laws or we're not for laws. So that'll come up here in a minute, I'm sure. But in principle, Rodney, we agree. The president shouldn't just be able to do whatever he wanted. I will say that USAID was originally created by executive order by John F. Kennedy. And I'm sure, from what I understand of it, it was a good thing. We were fighting for culture around the world. Yeah. And it was money that was going to be sent to, some country that was teetering on for democracy or teetering on social, going to socialism or communism. And we wanted them to hear our jazz music. We wanted them to experience American culture and Hollywood movies. And, it's like anything. Mike Benz is really great at this, by the way. If you've never listened to Mike Benz, he breaks down all this stuff at a very, receipts down to the corporations, names of people, gives you the documents, websites to go to. That guy is on top of his game.
Okay, I'll check him out.
That being said, it's to me, it's one of those things it started off, and when you hear about it, it's we're fighting for democracy around the world. That's a good use of taxpayer benefit to try to have our musicians and spotlight American culture to kind of lean them our way. And you can understand how that would be politically a good idea to do. But then unfortunately, I think it's morphed into all these other things that are maybe not necessarily serving humanity or the United States anymore.
And that's the problem with the government or any large organization where there's too many cooks. And just checking off the things you said, for the record, I agree with Biden on a lot of things, but the student loan thing wasn't one of them. I paid off my student loans, for the record.
Yeah.
So yeah, I never agreed with that. I know college is expensive. It's too expensive, but if you got a student loan, you knew what you signed up for.
We're in agreement.
Yeah. Second, yeah, the whole the examples you brought up with presidents doing overstepping their authority has happened in the past. Yeah, probably. I think the reason that people are so freaked out now is because it's happening multiple times. It's like I said earlier, it's too much too fast. Again, I'm all for. If I wish that Trump was doing it more like Clinton did back in the 90s. He did the same thing. He was, if I'm right, Clinton's the only president in my lifetime that's actually reduced the debt. So you'd think we would have, would emulate some of that.
Listen, I think Clinton overall did a really good job as president. I mean, I didn't like Hillary. I thought Bill did. I thought Bill did overall. I thought that time frame was a really great time frame for the country, other than obviously the Lewinsky and a handful of other things. But again, we're never going to agree with everything that happens.
You know how I feel about that? It's kind of like Michael Jackson. I do not approve of or agree and wish, but I enjoy his music.
Right.
Clinton did the job we hired him to do. So
right.
That's where that's at.
Yeah.
But with what's going on with Trump, it's a blitzkrieg. It's like, let's do this done, this done, this done. And my problem with that, it's two things. First of all, I can't remember who said it, but one of his MAGA supporters said, you know what? We need to put them in trauma. We need to, I can't remember who it was, but basically we need to make it to where federal employees don't want to go to work. Inflicting pain, even emotional, to fellow Americans should never be the ultimate goal of any administration. I have a real problem with that. And that seems to be kind of what's going on. It's almost like the cruelty is the point. But also, from a pragmatic standpoint, I understand why they're doing what they're doing for another reason. In April, there's a special election, and they may lose some of their, right now they have all the cards. Mm-hmm. And they want to do everything they can get done. It's kind of the Ruth Bader Ginsburg thing all over again. Remember when she died, and it was 8 weeks before the election, and they said, quick, let's get another justice, mm-hmm. even though, but there's no law against it. It was just more of an honor system thing. And they, basically the Republican reaction was, you do it if you were in our situation, you'd do it. Don't agree with it. But that's what's going on now. It's quick, we got it, push. But I find it ethically repugnant because thousands of people are losing their jobs. Thousands of people lost their jobs under Clinton too, but they saw it coming and they had time to brace for it and prepare for it. But now, today is March 1st. Effective today, there's a lot of Americans who don't have health care, mm-hmm. and they don't know how they're going to pay their mortgage. I have a problem with that.
Well, there's a lot there. Coming back to the king thing, we're in agreement. I don't have a king, I have a president.
Yeah, we 100%.
I also think that the big difference maybe between back then and now is Trump is... This should be able to be agreed upon. He is the target for everything anti-bureaucracy. He's always, there's been so many anomalous things that he's been a target of, starting with the Russian collusion hoax, which was fully investigated and he's completely exonerated, being the first president to be spied on while he's in the office by the deep state, by our intelligence agencies. Being the first president to have his home raided afterwards, being the first president to have all these indictments against him, which from my point of view are baseless on everything I've seen. And so the reason why, in my opinion, he's this figure and he's so vilified, I would say, by the press is because the press is largely controlled by these bureaucracies, and these bureaucracies are largely enabled by tax dollars. So when you look at these things where USAID political contributions, something like 95+% of the political contributions from those employees go one way, and it's not towards Trump. So when you have all these people in these organizations, they're all going one way. And that makes me wonder, is because do they know they don't want the spigot to get turned off? If you're an employee at USAID making $250,000 a year, yeah, you're going to be pissed you lost your job. But as a taxpayer, I have to ask, what in the world were you doing? I've never made $250,000 in 1 year, and I've worked hard. I'm self-employed my whole life. I've never made that kind of money. And you get people that are working from home and like, what's your job description? You're, studying what? And those are the type of things where I understand those people are going to be upset that they lost their job, just like a lot of unvaccinated people were upset they lost their job. Just like people that were impacted by the Keystone Pipeline were upset that they lost their job. It's just one of these things where, do I want anybody to lose their job? No. Do I want people to be happy and pay their mortgage and have health insurance? Yes. But do I want my country to be able to pay its bills? Do I want people who pay into Social Security their whole life to get their Social Security check? There's all these things where the bottom line is we are $36 trillion in debt. And something I'm not happy about that's largely Republicans voted for, we raised the debt ceiling again.
Yeah.
And, that's happened with both parties, and people are going to demonize Trump for this. But the reality is the last 16 years have been 75% Democrat, and we've grown our deficit from 2008 to 36 trillion. Now, Trump was for that, and he didn't do any better. So I'm hoping for somebody to do better. And I think the way we get there is you have to cut spending, and there's going to be lots of people that are not happy about the way it's done. They're certainly not happy about the results, especially if you're some NGO who's getting millions of dollars a year and all of a sudden that money is gone. You got to lay people off. You're all of a sudden you're wondering, what am I going to do for money? And you've been high on the hog, just having this cushy 30-hour a week working from home. I would say this guy knows some people like that, to be honest. That's a different conversation. But that being said, it's I think there's style, right? I don't want to talk the whole time, but
I agree for the most part you're saying. And you know what? I can see the view of the hound too. The reason people voted for Trump, and this is a very simplistic way of saying it, was to shake things up. And he wants to run the country more like a business. He basically wants to do more with less. And I see some pros and cons with that. The con with the way he's going about it, basically, think of the country as a ship, and you have a bunch of knots tying the sails together, and you get on the ship, and this is a mess. We don't need all these, and these knots are garbage. The proper way to do it would be, okay, let's start untangling these knots one by one and see what they affect. But instead, he's taking a scimitar and just hacking through them and say, you know what? If we really need that knot, we'll just tie it back together. We have rope, right? That's kind of where we're at. And again, I agree with the idea, but the way it's being done, it's just too reckless.
Well, devil's advocate here.
Okay.
If they know what's coming, they have time to prepare for it. So, for example, I've seen reports, I don't know if this is true or not, but how the FBI was destroying lots of Epstein evidence. They were destroying lots of things where, behind the scenes stuff going on to go after Trump or go after his political opponents. Not his political opponents, but let's not forget Steve Bannon spent time in jail. Multiple people around Trump literally went to jail. So when they're talking about Trump's going to demonize the Department of Justice, that's already happened. It's already happened. It's already been politicized. And that's those type of things. There's all kinds of people trying to cover their tracks. If they were doing unethical things, which I think we would both agree, if you're doing unethical things, you deserve to be punished. If you're abusing the law, you deserve to be punished. I'm going to throw his name out there. He probably hates me if he's ever heard of me. His name's Kevin Kleinsmith. He's a lawyer for the Department of Justice. He omitted the fact that Carter Page was an informant for the United States against Russia. They omitted that fact so that they could spy on Carter Page, which allowed them to spy on Trump. And so there's things like that Kevin Kleinsmith is a lawyer. We can look it up. Slap on the wrist for like a year. Never went to jail. I mean, you violated the incoming president's rights.
And that burns me up.
And I know that does. And so, but these are little things that if we had a media presenting all the facts, I believe a lot of us would be on the same page.
And can we touch on that for a second?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier about the the media, cover, if we had a media covering things more, transparently, just being even things
Put the
are better.
facts. Just give us facts.
Yeah, and that's the way journalism is supposed to be. It's not you're supposed to say this is what happened and let people form their opinion, but that doesn't get clicks. I'm sorry to say, the media and politics. Unfortunately, it's a symbiotic relationship. Politicians want votes, media want clicks, and so it's let me say, CNN again, Easter egg hunt. Try to find something good about Trump on CNN, and the flip side, try and find something good about Obama on Fox.
Right.
That they're playing to their audience.
And we both know that.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why, I try to do, and like you said, we've all fallen for it. It's impossible not to fall for some misinformation at this point. All you can do is your best.
Right.
And that's why I try to favor more neutral things, like the one I sent you about Ukraine. If it's international, I usually start with BBC, because if they're reporting on us, they don't have as much skin in the game.
Right.
So that's my thought process.
Sure.
But yeah, it's unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, this is one of the curses of the rise of the internet.
Sure.
Because and that's why I had to change careers, because print journal, everyone can be a journalist now. You just have to get on YouTube and say your opinion, or TikTok.
Right.
And in my opinion, TikTok is the devil, because 60 seconds, it can be just enough time to, say, oh, I didn't know about that. But instead the sort of thing that usually comes on. But yeah, unfortunately, it's really hard to find, stuff that's neutral unless you really look for it. And you just have to take the time to get varying points of view, and which is what we're doing here today,
Right.
but varying points of view, and then just figure out for yourself, okay, if they're saying this and they're saying this, what's the truth?
And the thing is, one thing I love about capitalism and the free market is I have a desire to have a news source that just spits me facts. I will pay for that if it's $5 a month or something like that. If I could go to a place where I had, and maybe it's when I first got into interest into politics, it was probably the end of the 90s, early 2000s. There was a show called Hannity and Combs. That's still to this day probably my favorite show I used to watch, because I used to listen to Sean Hannity give his conservative slant on things, and you had Combs, I forget his first name, rest in peace, he would give his more liberal side of things. And they would pick a topic, kind of like we're doing, and they would talk about it. And I would listen to one person, and I was, I can kind of see the middle here. They both gave their slant on it, and I thought it was a great show. And I hate to see that went away. And we already know social media is going to feed us our algorithms.
And it's
echo chambers and all that.
Yeah, and you have to go out of your way to find points of view that aren't being just spoon fed to you.
Sure.
Earlier you used the analogy of a fire hose, and I think that's very apt. I don't mind admitting at this point, because it's just so exhausting. I used to listen to the news every morning. Now it's every other morning.
Right.
Just because it's so. Just part of my mind is, oh, is that real? Let me go look at that. But I've got things to do.
Right.
So,
and I think culturally, humanity we're getting reacclimated to this major trend. We're getting fed through a water hose. We're drinking through a water hose all the time. Mm-hmm. You get on social media. I pull open my computer to do some work, and the first thing on my Microsoft, it's all these headlines and stuff trying to grab my attention. I have to literally sometimes, I'm going to try to ignore it and look at the...
It's an act of will, yes.
Yeah, and it's because the other thing is all these things are listening to us nonstop. We're constantly... They know us better than we know ourselves in a lot of cases.
And we lost something. Again, it's just the generation we have now. We've really lost something in that... Yeah, it's a different world, and there's some really great things about the internet, but there are some really, and like you said, I guess we're in an acclimation phase, and I do worry about that. We don't have to go on this subject; it's not connected to any of our memes, but millennials, they're the first generation that has fully grown up with this,
sure,
and you can see the difference. A lot of them don't have the social skills that we have. The bright side is we finally found a way to curb teenage pregnancy, because they don't date as much, because they don't socialize as much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm a believer in humanity. I'm a believer in the quantum field, to be honest. And that's a whole other topic that I believe all of our consciousness, we're all connected. Okay, that's my point of view. We're all connected. We're all energy, and there's studies that show on this. But I believe collectively we're going to all acclimate to a better way of doing something. And so I just think about, like, people will say, I just say this: anything can be good or bad. You know, good people do good things with money. Bad people do bad things with money, right? You know, nuclear energy. We can power a city or we can blow it up. AI, it's going to be a problem. And it's also going to be awesome. The internet's the same thing. So I think with social media and these things, we have to learn how to use it to our benefit. We have to understand what it's done to us. I'm sure you saw that show. It was on Netflix, I think it was a while back, the social...
The Social Network?
I think that was it. And it talks about the algorithms, and it talks about depression levels and things like that. And, you know, kids trying to live up to these models that have all these filters and stuff. And it's like, you know what, hopefully that's more common knowledge now. And we know that, you know what, that guy is not that good looking, or that girl's butt is not that amazing. Yeah. She actually has, you know, a little bit of whatever on her leg and it's airbrushed. Like, you can't look at social media and think that's how we have to live.
And one last thing, and then let's move on to the next meme. I think what's the big thing we have to overcome is the lack of empathy that we see in this country. And that's one of the reasons I don't like Trump, because he has his good points. And again, going back to what I said, I'm practicing what I preach. He's not there to be a moral role model. He's there to do a job. So fine. But I see too many people cheering for the wrong thing. Like you just expressed, it's unfortunate if people lose their jobs, but it's necessary. Too many things I see and again, I understand online are the jerks, but too many people are cheering for it, saying, yeah, go. This is, yeah, it's not good.
So this is a great one. She face plants in her own video. It's like, well, listen, Mike Ben's claiming that media is like profiting off this. And then she goes on to show how the media is profiting off this in her own video. Check this out.
Now, neither Musk nor Benz has offered any tangible evidence of the crimes they say USAID committed, and they didn't respond to my requests for comment. But a lot of their posts include misleading claims or outright falsehoods that can be easily debunked, like accusations that USAID was funding news agencies like Politico. Government records show agencies across the federal government were actually paying for premium subscriptions.
So that one's pretty clear. Like, it's not like we have to talk a long time about this, but I will just say that first off, she literally debunked her own video.
Yeah, she stuck her foot in her mouth.
I don't want taxpayers paying for journalism and media, because then they have a say in what's covered and what's not covered. And coming back to our original, what I would say is the reason why it's 1A, like literally number one, is freedom of press. That's super important, because we all deserve to know what the truth is, and press should expose the government and bureaucrats or motives, things like that. And I don't care if it's Biden or Trump. I want what's right for the American people first and foremost, and then outside of that, I want what's right for the rest of the world. You know, I don't think there's a lot to disagree with right there. You know, it's
Not really. It's we've already talked about.
I feel like we've already touched on that a little bit. And again, that's where government employees being laid off and all that kind of stuff, and USAID. This is such a hot topic right now, but to me, that's an example of one way where I'm paying for disinformation or misinformation or censorship, that kind of stuff, and I'm not down with that. I don't want. I've been outspoken about censorship for a long time, and the only point I'll make on that, and then let you say whatever you want to say about this one, is that this is why censorship's important. The people that were, I forget the singing lady that was going to head the Department of Censorship or whatever that the Biden admin was promoting, a misinformation bureau. I don't remember the lady. I just remember her face. It was awful. And this is why not having censorship is important, Because the people that wanted censorship before, now you don't have any power. This is why you want the ability for you to have your voice, and I want you to have your voice as well. So that's all I'll say about that. It doesn't matter who's in charge. I don't believe in censorship, period.
No, yeah, that's why I have issues when I hear things like not teaching things about the past, or let's not teach about this because it makes people uncomfortable. No, anytime someone tries to ban information or hide it, you should make a beeline to what that is and try and find out for yourself. What is this and why are they trying to keep it from me?
Yeah,
that's pretty cut and dry.
And listen, America's history is like any country's history, right? We've got our good stuff. I think we have a lot of good stuff, and then we got some dark stuff. You're a black man. I'm not. I don't know your experience in the United States necessarily.
Okay. You know what? Let's go there.
Yeah.
All right. First of all, I totally agree with what you said. The United States isn't perfect, and yeah, socioeconomically, it hasn't always been great to, look like me. And that's why when MAGA says "Make America Great Again," I would appreciate a straight answer of what time period are you trying to go back to? Mm-hmm. But I love my country, and I'm one of the richest people in the world, just like you, and relative to the rest of the world.
Sure.
For all its problems, America's, pretty great. But that's why when I hear these people saying this is the way it is, love it or leave it, it's like, no, love it or try and make it better. That's what talks like this and people objecting is all about. And the thing that concerns me now, as a black man, let's see what's happened in the past month. The head of, I can't remember exactly what his title is, but the head of
Air
health.
Force.
Yeah. Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Okay.
Being, appointed to that. He has a lot of, let's just use the word interesting opinions. But one of them is black people have stronger immune systems, so they need, they don't need the same medicine that we do. They don't need the same vaccines. So if he gets his way, I get a different series of medicine than you. One might say a separate but equal series of medicine. I have a real problem with that.
Well, I hadn't heard that. And I've listened to a lot of RFK stuff that, in my mind, a lot of things I've heard about him have been taken out of context. And this is not something we kind of planned on talking about, but show the science if that's a true statement.
And that's my problem with it. There's no science to back that up.
Well, he's so that almost would make me think we need to look into that statement.
It came up when they were, interviewing him, but it got glossed over. And just like you said, we didn't. This is kind of impromptu, but
sure,
something else. The head of diplomacy, Darren, I can't remember his last name, Beatty or something, but he said, and I'm quoting as close as I can verbatim, competent white men need to be in charge or things won't get done. And he didn't say this years ago. He said this 6 months ago.
Well, let's do this. I mean, I'm certainly up for part 2 if we ever want to dive into some of these things.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to me, the best example of this kind of stuff is when you say the fine people on both sides. That was something that Trump said was totally taken out of context.
It was taken out of context, yes.
But there's still people running around saying that, and the media went with it for a long time. Even Barack Obama repeated that here recently. And it's one of those things like they know that's not true. They know it was taken out of context.
After a certain point they did, yeah.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where I'm sure generally speaking,
it's hard to take those comments out of context, but yeah, we can, if you want to. I'm enjoying this, and I'd be happy to do it again sometime.
Yeah, and this, to me, honestly, the last one of these I did, it was kind of therapeutic to be able to talk about stuff,
Me too.
But that being said, I want competent people in positions, especially important things, whether you're flying a plane, whether you're running, fill in the blank, right? I want competent. I don't care about your sexuality. I don't care about your race. I don't care about your ideology, really. As long as you're a good human and you're trying to do your job to your best, you're accountable, you show up every day, you're working to make it better. Like, I don't care about any of that other stuff. What
you're hinting at is merit-based hiring, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that would work fine if it weren't for, and there's a term for it, homophily. That's the tendency for people to be attracted to or form stronger social bonds with people who are like ourselves, same race, age, socioeconomic status, religion, and, what's the easiest one to see? But the reason I don't think, my issue with, if people played it straight and if people were honest and that wasn't an issue, then it would work. But it is a very strong tendency. You even see it in children. If people who have kids, if they go to someone new's house, the first question a kid's going to ask, do they have kids? Because they want to play with someone their own age. So it's an instinctive thing.
I can see that.
And you can't just say that's not going to come into it. If you've got two people who are about even Steven, I'll go with the person who makes me more comfortable. That's why. But the real reason, and we've both talked about how we are burned up with hypocrisy. You're not going to tell me that woman, Linda McMahon, that he hired as the head of Department of Education, is the most qualified person.
All right, let's go right into that one because we teed that one up.
Did I do a meme? Did I send you a meme about that one?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So we're going to go into this one here.
All right.
Cabinet with daytime TV personalities. He's also hiring from pay-per-view.
Trump has also picked major Republican donor and former pro wrestling executive who is helping with his transition, Linda McMahon, for Education Secretary.
Yeah, that's right. Pro wrestling executive Linda McMahon. You might remember her from being head of small business in Trump's previous administration, or you might remember her from the time she kicked her husband in the balls.
Linda rose from her chair!
It's too bad that was fake, because he's a monster. Now, does Linda McMahon have expertise in education? No, of course not. She's being appointed to the Department of Education. Why would she?
The first thing I think about when I look at this is, first off, I don't know anything about this lady. Okay. So we can do a Google search, and if we really wanted to say what does she bring to the table, I have no ideas. The only information I have on this lady is that she kicked her husband in the balls. Which I would say this. Maybe the Department of Education needs a good kick of the balls.
Okay,
and
she's
that's
a fair.
Subject matter expert.
That's fair.
So I truly don't know anything about this lady. My gut instinct is that she probably gave a lot of money.
Yes.
My gut instinct is that he probably is planning on tearing that down to something very minute from a federal level and start giving money directly to the states. To get rid of the bureaucracy and the billions of dollars. And again, I haven't done any deep studies on the Department of Education, but I've seen a lot of content about how we've funded all these tens of billions or hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and the quality of our education has gone down. Our results have gone down. And so it's one of those things we're spending all this money and we're not getting results. So as a business owner, I couldn't do that. As a federal bureaucracy that's going in the hole $1.5 trillion every year, we got to find ways to cut. And if we could, let's say that organization is $10 billion a year, and we can run it down to 10 people that essentially we're funding 50 states, $5 billion a year goes towards reducing deficit every year. 5 billion times 10 or 50 states rather, or whatever, wherever we're sending the education money goes right to the states, and the states can deal with it at a local level. And in my opinion, the smaller the organization, like a state, the better off they are to deal with their specific needs in that area. That would be my thought. I don't know her qualifications. She probably gave a lot of money.
Your instincts are on point there. Yes, she gave a lot of money, and I couldn't care less about her doing WWE or whatever. It's funny, but Ronald Reagan was an actor. Look at for better or worse, look what he accomplished. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a good governor. So whatever. Sure. But for the record, what I know of, she majored in French, and the closest thing she has to an educational background is the program she took, and this is back in I think either the 60s or the 70s, a long time ago, but the background was so she could be able to teach it. It stops there. And that, that knowledge is so old at this point, the way things are done, it's antiquated.
Sure.
But I can't, Yeah, the Department of Education has some serious flaws. Yeah, and we are behind, and this is something, obviously, I started a tutoring business for a reason. I'm very passionate about education, and again, minorities that have had a hard history, that's the answer. The answer to build your way up
More
is
education, skills.
And what burns me up is when people say, if you just work hard, you can make it. Hard work, yes, obviously that's the cornerstone, but it only gets you so far if you don't have the tools.
I agree.
A kid with dyslexia, he can want it as hard as he wants, but if he doesn't have someone to help him, I
agree.
And what we've got going on, that's why I can't get down with dismantling, improving it. Okay, cutting it. Okay, but okay, it's defective. Let's burn it all down. No, and then what's the plan to replace it? That's my problem. Does she even know what Title I is? Title I, for the record, is it's part of a federal program. A Title I school is given more help because it's in an area that's poor, and it's based on how many children are on free or reduced or discounted lunches. And that's necessary because compare Wake County schools to Franklin County schools. Mm-hmm. It's a massive difference. Wake County has more resources, the teachers are better, and that makes such a difference because even when you get in that schools, even those schools a lot of times don't have what they need because you have an AP class where the bright children are, and you have a lower class where an average class, a teacher's got to appeal to, okay, I've got the kid who's smart enough to be an AP, but he's just lazy. Mm-hmm. The kid who's with dyslexia who really needs my help, the disruptive kid, the average kid, and their classes are bigger. You see what I'm saying? What it comes down to is, we don't put enough into education. Every time you start, how many times in the past, if you paid attention to it, how many times in the past okay, we need to cut something, let's cut education. It's always one of the first ones, it seems to me. And I admit being biased, mm-hmm. but I've seen it on the chopping block too many times. And now it's, okay, it doesn't work. Let's just get rid of it.
Well, and I would say from my point of view, and we'll see what happens, I don't feel like they're going to, quote, get rid of it.
I hope not.
I think from the federal level, D.C. has less, I would say less relevant knowledge to the needs of Franklin County, North Carolina, than Franklin County, North Carolina would. So if you took that money and take it away from some bureaucrat and lots of jobs doing I don't know what, and all kinds of layers of paperwork and computers and credit cards and all kinds of mess that goes along with all that bureaucracy, and that money goes right to the county based on population or something like that, I think the same amount of money could hit the North Carolina, let's say, for example, because that's where we're at today. If we had the same amount of money hitting that and we got rid of all this stuff up here, I just think it's better suited to be managed at a state level or even at a county level. And maybe there's 50 counties in North Carolina and you divide that money based on the population and boom, it goes in those counties. And now you have local county people that get to decide, what are we going to do with this money? Do we need more food, or do we need computers, or do we need some assistance with tutors, or whatever the case is? Do we need another classroom?
And that's not a bad idea, and I'm open to that. But my issue is, and then this seems to be a more conservative approach, that a lot of people on that side are great at pointing out flaws and saying, nope, this doesn't work. Well, okay, what's your idea, or what are we going to replace it with? And the answer is, And that's my problem. If you want to tear it down, fine, but tell us what you're going to replace it with first. And that's kind of going back to how Clinton did things back in his day. Mm-hmm. He took his time and said, okay, we're going to get rid of this, but here's what we're going to do in its place. And he got bipartisan support. Mm-hmm. That is not what's going on here.
Well, I think Trump could cure cancer and he wouldn't get bipartisan support.
Okay,
I think
all right, that's fair. It's too polarized.
It's very polarized, and I think it was a very different world back in the 90s, and I would love to see it get back to that, to where, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton would go at it on the Congress floor, negotiate, but then they'd go off and have some bourbon and smoke cigars, and they're cutting it up or something. And it's like, I would like to see us get back to that.
And Trump's not going to be the guy to bring us there because he by nature is divisive.
I would say he's got that type of personality.
He has a very strong personality.
Personality. You hit him. I mean, I've read a lot of his books. You hit him, he's going to hit you twice as hard back. And he's been thrown punches the media, the deep state, the FBI. I mean, he's been public enemy number one for the entire world for a long time. So that's his personality. He is the bull in a china shop for sure. And like it or not, I almost think it's kind of what the country needs in some way. That doesn't mean I want destruction for the sake of destruction. I want efficiency. I want, some kid in Durham County, North Carolina, I want him, if we're taking tax dollars to educate that kid, I want him to get the best possible result from that dollar possible.
Or at the very least, something to shoot at. That's why, upward bound is it. I'm sorry. I'm going it.
Your teacher stuff.
Yeah.
Go
sorry.
ahead. I mean, people.
Yeah. It's when I hear that those grants are going away, those programs are going away. Yeah. I'm like, but that accomplishes so much. It helps. So, and that's when it feels to me like, so the cynical side of my brain wants to say, see, it's about keeping poor people poor and, and taking away opportunities so that, people who are, it's about, this goes into emotion since this is something that I feel strongly about. Sure. It's harder to articulate, but the way everyone, you know what, the last time we talked, one of the things I asked you about was, does America owe black people anything? And I apologize if I made you uncomfortable. I hope I didn't.
No, not
but
at all.
The answer is, and I'm going to get some backlash from my own people with this, but this is my honest thought on it. The answer is not much. Slavery, it happened a long time ago. The offending parties and the victims are long dead. Life isn't fair. And it socioeconomically has set us up to where, we're disproportionate. There are more black people who are poor because of it. You can't deny that. That's the truth. But so how do we make it right? Give them a chance. Give them some support. Give them, let's give them a little bit of support for life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Mm-hmm. Give them something to aim at. That's why scholarships are really, really important. Mm-hmm. That's why these programs for, minorities are really, really important. And DEI, that's not just about minorities. It's the thing. That's also about, pregnant women. That's about the autism, people with disabilities. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more in that, but that's why I keep seeing these things all cut. And that's why it burns me up. It's like, but it feels like, okay, well, sometimes you just get screwed because you're not the majority. And that's what it feels like on this side.
Well, I think we'll agree that I want opportunity for everybody. And a quote I came up with a long time ago, I've said it probably 100 times, is you don't worry less about the minimum wage and worry more about maximizing your skills. Because if you know how to lay hardwood floors, you're going to make a lot of money in America. If you're a contractor with skills, you're going to make a lot of money. If you are a programmer, so the goal is to, from my point of view, I don't care about race, gender, and all that kind of stuff. Give everybody what they need to give them the best opportunity to succeed in this country. And unfortunately, we don't have unlimited funds, never going to be that way. But give everybody what they need. And that's where, when I go back to the first Trump presidency, when he created the tax breaks and opportunity zones. So he created opportunity zones is what he called them. So he was incentivizing businesses to go into low-income areas, and they got tax breaks for forming business in that area. And the goal is, you go there, you bring some good jobs, you create some training, you raise the standard of living for the people in that area. So you're not robbing that house because you have a good job now, and you can buy a car, and you can have health care and things like that. So I thought that was a really smart program. So again, I'm not going to sit here and say that they're doing the right thing because I don't know all the details about it. From a macro level, I like the idea of trimming the Department of Justice, the Department of Education way down at a federal level. Take those funds, a lot of them, save some money, because we got to save money. We got to make cuts somewhere. And then push a bunch of that money down to the state level. Let the state administer it, whether it's at the county level or the state level. The other thing that kind of pisses me off is we started the North Carolina lottery education that was supposed to help education. And it's like, how come we're always talking about money? I mean, we've got tax dollars that go for this. We've got a lottery that goes for this. Where's all the money? And that's where I just think if we dig into this, just like when, like him or not, Elon Musk took over Twitter, he cut 80% of the workforce and it runs fine. You know, I'm expecting that type of result at the federal level. And that's what I'm hoping. And I
hope you're right.
I hope it's 90% good, because to me that's a victory. And maybe 10% of things that were cut, and they're going to be some adverse effects, and people couldn't really predict it, and then we can make some changes.
I hope you're right. Based on the histories, I have my doubts, but the cynical part of my mind wonders, okay, why are they doing what they're doing? Trump's not complicated to figure out. He wanted to be president again for a multitude of reasons. He wanted to avoid legal trouble. He likes being in charge, and he likes being the center of attention. So, Trump I get, but Elon Musk, he put $280 million towards it. What's he getting out of it? Is he doing all this just to be nice, or just because he loves the country, or is he getting something more out of it? And that's where you come down to the whole billionaire tax, which again, I understand. Once you get up to that level, the rules it's great to say, it sounds patriotic when you say no one's above the law, and but when you get to that level, I refuse to believe there are a lot of billionaires out there that didn't step on people here and there to get that high up. But that's just, let's not be naive. That's just the way the world works. But I'd have to wonder, okay, what's really important to him? Is it all that money that's going to be saved? Is that coming back to you and me? Is that going towards programs, or is that going in their pockets?
Well, time will tell, I would say.
Yep. Reality will be the final arbiter on that.
And I don't even care if it comes back to me. Just stop going further in the hole federally.
That's fair. I see that.
We've got a $36 trillion deficit, and we pay $1 trillion a year in interest right now. Imagine what that $1 trillion a year could be going to that's productive. It could be going to kids. It could be going towards helping people that need health care. It could be going towards a lot of great causes. But if we're spending it on interest, it's one of these things like anytime. I remember Timothy Geithner, which was Obama's Department of Treasury, I think it was. I remember him basically, I think we were 13 trillion in the hole at this time. I think it was 13. And he's kind of beating his chest about this, like, we're going to be at $20 trillion in the hole if we don't stop this spending. And politicians, and I'm not blaming just Democrats here, it's Republicans too, politicians kept kicking the can down the road. So now we're at 3 times what it was back in 2011, I think it was. And so this number is exploding to the tune of 1.5 to 2 trillion a year. And if we don't stop the bleeding, we're going to bleed out. And then what? What do we do as a country?
And I'm not excusing it, but that's why I do get the point of view of people excusing Trump's behavior because of, at least he's getting something done. While I don't agree with that mindset, I understand the argument, because it's frustrating to watch Congress year after year. Okay, we're going to talk it out. We're going to do something, and then they never do anything.
Right.
I get it.
And so I'm grateful, and we're probably going to agree to disagree with this. I think Elon Musk has better things to do than to try to fix the federal government. I don't think he's in this for himself. I truly don't. I think when he started PayPal, and he was sitting there coding for 20 hours a day because he's a maniac genius. And then he built that up and sold it off. By the way, he had access to basically everybody's information back then, just for the record. And then because he created PayPal, and then he sold that off. And then he's so greedy. What did he do? He didn't even own a house. He put all of his money into SpaceX because he believes in humanity, started Tesla because he wanted electric vehicles because they're friendlier to his point of view, they're better for the world than burning gas. So literally started the Boring Company, Tesla, SpaceX. He took all of his money. He was a billionaire, put it all into these things that were for the betterment of humanity. And he goes on, he becomes the richest man in the world, and he sees this problem of free speech is going away in the Western world. That's a problem. I'm going to buy Twitter. And the second he decided to buy Twitter, he was marked. He was a marked man. I can't believe they didn't shoot down his plane or something, because right when that happened, anybody who knows me that talked to me about this, I said, they're going to demonize him just like they did Trump. And he's going to be public enemy number 2. And here we are today. Like, there's so many people that can't stand Elon Musk, and that's part of the, that's part of the deal, right? And he knows that going into it. So I believe he bought Twitter not because it was a great deal. He spent $44 billion because he wanted free speech, and he was doing his part to save Western civilization. And that was after we know that the FBI was paying Twitter, number one. They were censoring citizens. I mean, Donald Trump was the sitting president, and he got censored. Like him or not, that's insane. There were countless people, like the Taliban was on Twitter, but not Donald Trump.
Sorry, when you say censored, are you talking about on the platforms?
They removed him.
Okay, well, they're private companies. That, when I hear censorship, I'm thinking like, free press.
They did it because the FBI told them to. And all these, and the Department of Justice was feeding these people. They got rid of the Hunter Biden laptop story because they were told by the FBI it was Russian disinformation, which we know is a lie. They knew exactly. They had it. So anyway, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come right back.
Okay.
And so we just took a quick break, kind of wrapping up the thoughts on Elon. I believe he has better things to do. I believe that he's doing this because he wants, I think he believes it's important, just like he thought free speech was important. And I could be wrong, but that's my impression. And I just think that I think he's trying to take his talents and try to impact humanity in a positive way, like he was doing with SpaceX, like he was doing with Tesla, and I just think like he was doing with Twitter. And I think he's taking that same mindset that, what, I've got all the money I could ever want. I don't care about that. That people say, he's getting this or he's going to get this, or I personally don't believe he's in it for any of that. I think he would actually probably hurt himself by doing what he's doing, because he would know that these things could potentially look like a conflict of interest, and now I'm going to have to turn it down and maybe even close that door.
And that's one of the things that gets me concerned. A lot of the departments and entities he's going after, he has a raw history with. They investigated him for this, or they came down on him for that. But we'll see. At the end of the day, where I'm at on that is, what, we've got 3 years and 11 months left. It's kind of the 9/11 effect for me. At a certain point, you just have to turn away and say, it's going to play out.
We'll see what happens. Yeah,
exactly.
And again, the media is not an official referee that's just saying unbiased stuff. It's they're depending upon the media, right?
Yeah, and that's
what we're going to go into. Like two more things here. We've Rodney and I have several things here we want to talk about, but it's so easy to have good conversation around a topic and discuss nuance and things like that. And hopefully you're enjoying this as much as we are, because this is kind of therapeutic to talk about it. I'm going to share one more, or is it your turn to talk? I don't remember.
I forget. You can go.
I'm just going to go with this Jake Tapper video. Here we go.
How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
you have
to
no
watch somebody on stage
that's so amazing. It's so amazing to me that
try and figure out an answer.
A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter. Yeah, I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline. I would think that somebody in the Trump family would be more sensitive to people who do not have medical licenses diagnosing politicians from afar. Plenty of people have diagnosed your father from afar, and I'm sure it offends you. Your father-in-law from afar. I'm sure it offends you. You don't have any standing to say.
I'm not diagnosing him. What I'm saying, Jake,
you just talked
is
about
that
a cognitive decline.
That Joe Biden
I have one last question
is
for you, Laura. You can't
times on stage, and it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay,
that is on.
All right, I think we get the gist there.
Yeah. Question: When was that?
That was during the election. So that was like, let me see.
Was that after the second debate?
This was before I think there was any debate. So but that was before the debate. Clearly before the debate, because after the debate, I think
there was no question.
There was no question. And so to me, this comes back to by the way, the reason why he was picked out for this is he has the book now called Original Sin. So the guy who's there defending Biden's stutter, which it wasn't a stutter, is now writing a book trying to capitalize on the cover-up of Joe Biden. It's like, dude, that was you. So this is where, a lot of people say fake news or fake media or this and that. And it's like, we just all have to look at this. In my opinion, we all have to look at this and say, we deserve better from a media outlet. Like this guy, Jake Tapper, he's lost credibility with me. Like, you are part of the problem, and you're going to try to profit off of the Original Sin. And I think that's disgusting. It's disingenuous. And so many people knew he was having problems. And I feel bad for him, actually. Getting old.
Yeah, and that's, it is what it is. And I would have walked through fire if I could have had two other candidates. I said from the beginning, they're both too old. Now, I hope that doesn't come across as age discrimination, but Biden was, even from the beginning, Biden was having issues, and Trump, and I've made no effort to, hide my distaste for him, but that aside, he's no spring chicken either. But
he is a machine, though. That guy's tweeting at like 3 a.m. Like, he is just a machine.
Yeah, for better or worse, sure.
For better or worse. But the guy, he's never drank. He's never smoked. And it makes me want to stop drinking, to be honest.
Here's
the guy's
the
a
thing.
maniac.
I've noticed there aren't too many 80-plus-year-old CEOs because it's a stressful job that requires a lot of mental acuity. But anyway, bottom line, sorry, man, you're deflecting. The stutter is a thing. I mean, shoot, I have a stutter sometimes. Now, Joe Biden, he had a pronounced stutter when he, was up and coming. Sure. But
I don't remember any stutters. I mean, maybe they were there, but I don't remember.
You have to go way back. We're talking like, we lost him last year, but James Earl Jones, when he grew up, he had a stutter.
Okay.
But it's so far back, it's pretty much irrelevant now. It's kind of my point.
Okay.
That's kind of how I feel about the Joe Biden thing. I can't believe Joe Biden was prone, even when he was vice president, he was prone to gaffes. We all knew that about him.
Of course, yeah.
But, I don't know exactly what specifically they're talking about, but it sounds like he's deflecting. To me, that's how it comes across.
Yeah. So somebody like this, Jake Tapper, I mean, anything the guy can say to me, you were so obviously part of the problem, and now you're trying to profit off it. Somebody like that, in my book, I really don't care what he has to say going forward. And I don't care who the people are. If you're so obviously in on the gig and then you're going to try to profit from it, to me, if you were trying to spot propaganda, that's it. That's exactly what propaganda looks like. And again, we're the same age. Baghdad Bob, stuff that I've talked about. So Baghdad Bob, during the Gulf Storm, the very first Gulf War, 1991, whatever it was, 90, when we were going into Iraq, I remember our media making fun of their media because they had all this propaganda that they were kicking America's butt. And they had Baghdad Bob. What's his actual name? Do you remember? Don't worry about it. But they had Baghdad Bob, which was basically the Jake Tapper saying how great everything's going. Okay. Meanwhile, we were just demolishing Iraq in that first Gulf War, General Schwarzkopf. So when I think of Baghdad Bob, that's Baghdad Bob. And it's like people like that, you lose your credibility. If you're wrong all the time, people are going to stop listening to you.
And it's, that's just the other version of wanting clicks. I can't remember who it was or when it was, but I remember, it's funny and sad, but I remember some news reporter that was reporting on a hurricane got caught.
Someone just walking casually in the back.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the wind's so far. It's just like,
it's awful. It's embarrassing.
But I get it. People want attention. People want to move up through their careers and whatnot. But integrity is, unfortunately, you don't get paid for that. Integrity is its own reward, and it should be. I don't have much more to say on that one.
Yeah, I think we're both on the same page with that. It's like we just all need to we need to have higher standards for journalism, And when someone is so blatantly, this guy shouldn't be on the air anymore. He just shouldn't.
And I think the other problem, the only thing I can add is, so many of them, at some point, if you look hard enough, almost every news organization has flubbed. Sometimes it's a question of have they owned it or not, But if they haven't, and that's why, again, that's why Fox News and CNN, they're at this point, I'll look at the stuff, but I look at I acknowledge, okay, you guys are on the extreme end. Whereas, Routers and AP, okay, you guys may not always get it right, but you're trying. You're more towards the middle.
Or at least come back and have the corrections.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, okay, I'll rely on you guys more than these guys.
All right. So Rodney had sent me a few other things. I'm gonna give you the choice here for your last one.
All right.
I got approved for my loan today. It's a thing of eggs. It's Pentagon announces thousands of civilian workers will be fired. There's the choice of the immigration debate video. And then lastly, I think there was one more here.
That's plenty. We've talked about Doge and everything enough. I'm gonna be greedy and try and go for both. Okay, so the price of it, the eggs thing, and
okay.
I just
we
said
can
that
do both. Yeah.
All right, that funny. And I personally haven't seen it as much, but inflation, and again, okay, Trump said, "Oh, I'll cure inflation in the first month." That's just him being him. You can't expect that.
It's bluster, yeah.
Right? But we'll see. I do keep hearing, I hate to bring Doge up again, but we found waste, and I haven't seen any proof of that. Show me. Okay, if you found waste, show me your math. But bottom line, we're thinking about giving everyone $5,000. God, I hope not. It's no, just like you said, put it back into use it for something good. But that's where that's one of the things that causes it. And inflation, it's a complicated matter. It comes from a lot of sources. Printing money,
primarily printing money, but a lot of sources.
Yeah. But it's an economic force no one has complete control of. Mm-hmm. And that's why everyone's saying, okay, and for better or worse, fair or unfair, the current administration gets the blame for inflation. Even though they can kind of tweak it based on what they do, but you can't stop it. It's cyclical. Mm-hmm. And the price of groceries now, it's funny how everyone is so bothered by that, but now all of a sudden it's still an issue. It's, if anything, things have gone up slightly, but I don't hear people talking about it as much anymore, except for, you see memes like that, and it's like, well, things haven't gotten better or worse. We're still in about the same boat.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things with the eggs in general. Number one, I'm hoping he continues to work on ways to bring prices down for everybody, because the reality is inflation doesn't hurt rich people. It helps them. So if you're a billionaire or multimillionaire and you've got a lot of your money tied up in real estate, well, real estate goes up when inflation goes up. This is Georges St. Pierre jersey he wore. I know you're not I don't think you're a UFC guy, right? No. I shouldn't say I don't know that. But the reason why I've got a lot of stuff over the last handful of years and not sitting on a ton of cash is because stuff goes up in value while cash devalues. So long story short is, talking about eggs, I expect to see prices go down. And the way I think about it, how do we do that? Well, once you reduce the cost of gas, so you create more gas supply, so those eggs that are being farmed by farmers using gas, those eggs have to get to the store using gas, and that will reduce the operating expenses for all of the chain there, right? And so being a business owner, I can tell you I spent almost $20,000 on gas last year. I mean, that's crazy. A small business like us, $20,000. And if they reduce the cost of gas by 20%, just my business saves $4,000 a year. That's a raise I can give out. That's reinvestments I can make. So, and can you imagine what Amazon is spending, or UPS, or, some of these delivery companies that are sending groceries to stores. So that's one way.
And yeah, be thankful at least you can write it off. But
well, it's definitely. But I got to spend it, and I got to collect it from my customer, though.
Yeah, but clearly you favor what is it? Classical economics, and I think I lean more towards Keynesian, but we don't have to get into the
okay.
So, but Bottom line, yeah, it'll go down eventually. It's just I hate that it's hard on people. That's why it stresses me out to see so many people losing their jobs all of a sudden. But we'll see how it plays out. And the other one was illegal immigration.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to say about the eggs is, and again, this is maybe it needed to be done, maybe it didn't. But the Biden administration recently killed 100,000 chickens or 100 million chickens, something like that.
I hadn't heard about that. What happened?
They were concerned about the
bird flu.
Bird flu, I believe. So again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I didn't really look into it. Let me just.
Okay, but this goes exactly what I was saying. You're more of the opinion that the government, the market will regulate itself, and the government, for the most part, unless it's really bad, needs to stay out of it.
I would say largely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say largely. And so, you kill off 100 million chickens, that's going to impact the prices of eggs directly.
Yeah.
And so there's less supply, or less demand rather, and less supply and same demand.
Why did they do it? Did they just...
I believe it was because they were concerned about a bird flu something.
I know the bird flu is an issue, but they're killing chickens to try and stop that. I'll have to look into it, but
yeah, I don't know. I just know it was. Let's just do this real quick. So while we're alive, why did the Biden administration kill so many chickens? Directed the U.S. walk back plans to stop culling poultry for bird flu. Blah blah blah. Let me try to get a number on this.
Okay. Well,
Biden administration withdraws. Let's see. Gives plan to control avian flu and lower. Oh, that's February 16th. So that's Trump.
Well, long story short, though, as far as the price of eggs going up, a lot of that's the bird flu. And as much as I like giving Trump a hard time, that's not on him. Again, force you can't control.
However, I do believe he's in a position to impact things, but it's to your point, that bluster of fixing it in 30 days, that's not a 30-day fix.
That was a politician promise. If you believe that, that's on you.
Yeah. So now I do expect to see an impact this year.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
And I think that's fair.
A year from now, if inflation hasn't gone down, that's where I'm going to start, biting my tongue on I told you so.
Right.
But again, I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
So illegal immigration.
So the last one, illegal immigration. Let's get to this last one.
Has committed a crime and you've got them in custody and they are in this country illegally, there is no common sense reason in the world why you do not turn that person over to ICE where they can decide how fast can we get them out of here. This is the stupidity of the immigration debate. This is a country built on immigrants. This is a country where Lady Liberty says, give us your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. We should be proud of that as a country, that this is a place where people want to come. And if they want to go through the difficult process of coming to this country legally, fleeing whatever ills from their home country, we should welcome that. We do welcome that. But there should be a big red line between those people and the people who come here illegally and repeatedly break the law over and over and over and over. There should be no sanctuary for them.
Okay, so may I go first?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I don't think too many people are going to outright disagree with pretty much anything she said, but her premise is flawed, okay? That's not the main... She said, this is the heart of the debate. No, the heart... one of the big problems is it's being framed as illegal immigrants. They're rapists and terrorists, and they're causing all the problems. Apply some critical thinking. Mm-hmm. If you came over here from Mexico looking for a better life because things over there aren't so good, and you managed to make it, are you going to stir up a bunch of trouble and try to attract attention? Or are you going to keep your head down?
Most people won't.
Yeah. Some of them are criminals, sure, but that's everything. That's everybody.
Sure, of course.
So
some Americans are criminals.
Yeah, exactly. That's just every race, every culture, every division has its own share of buttholes. Mm-hmm. But as far as the illegal immigration getting down to it, it breaks my heart when I see families separated and everything. But the cold hard truth is they're breaking the law, and this isn't like Jim Crow laws that are unfair, unreasonable. Mm-hmm. It's there's a process, mm-hmm. and if they haven't gone through it, and that's we have to draw the line somewhere, and this is where Democrats aren't they don't know when to say no. They don't know when to be hard. And this is one of those times. I hate the drug cartel situation in Mexico. It's awful, but we've got to tend our own garden. We've got our own problems.
Well, number one, I agree. If first off, if you're here illegally and you broke the law, you got to go.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
The second thing is there are murders and rapists that come over, but that's not the vast majority of people.
Exactly.
And so that's also something that was taken out of context when Trump said it. It was one of those fine people things, if you dig into it. So that being said, this is something that has baffled my, because I don't know if you know, I grew up in the Southwest. I mean, I'm from California and Arizona. Like, illegal immigration has been a problem since I've been a human, basically. And, I used to love Cheech and Chong growing up.
I remember Cheech and Chong.
It's not in here. I got a signed Cheech and Chong video in the next room.
Oh, wow.
But I used to love those movies growing up, and they were so funny, and there's all the jokes about illegals and all this kind of stuff. And so this isn't an overnight thing, but so I just want to address some things that she said. People who have come here from other countries are some of the finest people I know, and I say that categorically. That's my experience, okay? Mustafa came here legally, okay? His wife came here legally. And when I see somebody like AOC demonizing conservatives or MAGA or whatever you want to say, it's the law. And so when I think about somebody like AOC, your job is to make laws. How many times did you propose expanding the immigration system to make it easier?
Yeah.
People like Mustafa, I want more of him in this country. Mm-hmm. People like most of the people I know that are immigrants, they're some of the wonderful people, and they work hard, and they're grateful to be here. They love this country, and I want more of them here. Businesses want more of them here.
So yeah, we overwhelmingly agree on that.
Sure.
I think the problem is it's the negative aspect is it's similar to the trans argument. Okay, yes, it's an issue, but that's not. It's being used as a tool to rile people up, to get people out to vote.
Well, I agree because it's a problem that needs to be fixed and addressed, and I feel that he was trying to fix it. If you go back to something Trump said. Now, the one thing I'll say is that, Chris Rock tells a joke, it's hilarious. I tell the same joke, it's not quite as funny. And so it's not just the content, it's the delivery, right? And so I heard Trump say this one time. He says, we want to build a big, beautiful wall and blah, blah, blah. And he said, we also want a big door. And that was he should say that every time he talks about because I think then it's less easy to demonize him for that type of stuff. And so I want a big, beautiful door as well. But we've got so many inefficient government entities. What was it? It was Trump's last year's president. I think we had close to 1 million people naturalized. Like, there was the most people in history in 1 year under Trump. And that's, of course, not mainstream news. You can Google how many people have been naturalized and stuff. So all that being said, the people that cry the most in Congress and places like that, do your effing job. Fix the system. Make it better.
Yeah, or make it easier, yeah.
And I hope you don't mind me pointing you out here, but it was a pain in the ass for people to come here legally, and they're good people, and they have skills, and they want to be here.
And you almost wonder if it's intentional. Yeah.
And so to me, it's like politicians. It's like, nobody's above the law. Yeah, there is. A lot of people above the law. Apparently, the same people saying that are looking the other way when people are breaking the law. So that's the hypocrisy thing, right? So the people that are in position to fix the problem so often don't want to fix the problem because they have nothing to rile people up about now. And that in itself is a problem. I think we'd agree with that. And it's like, from my point of view, I feel like Trump has done more to address that issue, truly address it, than any politician. I just think he's not the greatest communicator about it. And yes, he probably says stuff to rile people up and rile up MAGA or whatever you want to say, because people, like, I can't pick and choose laws that I want to follow. So why do these people get to do that? And if you have people start picking and choose laws we want to follow, now you have anarchy. Now you're destroying society.
And that's the last thing to say on that. That's why, as much of a pain in the butt as it is to just send them back, I hate that too, but there's not a better option. The only way, it hasn't been much, but I have seen it floated a couple times where, all right, let's increase the punishment. Let's start, executing. No, you can't do that. We would lose ourselves. It's the price we pay for being successful. Yeah. And I don't have a better solution. But yeah, it's a country of immigrants, and that's, again,
we are.
Yeah. We're all agreed on that. And I just wish we could, it's just what you said. It's a shame that the negative aspect, it's just latched onto because it's a tool. And the same, that can be said for a lot of things, which maybe we'll talk about later, but that's I think a lot of problems we could be more effective with, but then, it's the whole, it's more profitable to treat cancer than cure it. I don't know how true that is or not, but I understand the argument.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on the illegal thing is I actually don't believe it's a terribly complicated thing if you take the politics out of it. So if you built a huge wall, let's just call it barrier. It might be the wall, it might be technology, it might be a lot of different things. It might be National Guard on the station there. The Pakistan and India, I believe it is, they have a wall that's so big and lit up you can see it from space.
Yeah, and I mean, Great Wall of China, but
let me finish the thought though.
Sure.
And then you really go after fixing the immigration system. All these millions of people that wanted to come here, 75% of them probably should have been able to come here through an organized, legal way and get them into the States, get them here, because we need good workers. Population collapse is a real thing. That's a real concern for a lot of these countries. I actually believe that's maybe part of the reason why there's so much pressure to import all these people. And then the people that came here illegally, the way I think about it is if you haven't broke law, and this is just my opinion, probably won't happen, but I think if you're here illegally, basically you're allowed to stay if you haven't broken laws, but you have like 90 days to register, to turn yourself in somewhere, get issued some type of special card. It's not a Social Security card.
And get in line.
Get you in the system. And maybe because you did it wrong, you don't get to vote for like 25 years or something like that.
I can see that.
Something to get you in the system, let you stay. We're not spending all this money and disrupting all these probably just good people that want a better life, most of them. Now, I do believe there have been terrorists caught at the border. I do believe the cartels are human trafficking and fentanyl and all these other things that are problems, and we can't pretend those don't exist. I think there's a humane way to go about it that's cost effective, that gives these people this wonderful country of opportunity. And it also, you're right, they're going to keep their head down. They don't want to F off and get shipped back to some dump somewhere where they left because the things are terrible there. So I think there's solutions. There are solutions to these things that when people talk about it, I just think there's a lot of common sense solutions coming back to the critical thinking. And I think we have to put America first. It's no different than if there's a bad situation and my son's in the room and you're in the room and I got to choose one. I'm sorry, Rodney, you're a good dude, but I'm going to take care of my son first. It's priorities, right? And vice versa.
But yeah, like you said, and that's not a bad idea, but it strengthens us to bring people who want to be here and are going to be good workers and whatnot.
Agree.
And doing it legally avoids these things like, okay, I'm paying him, but I'm paying him peanuts. That's costing tax dollars. That's costing, and that's, it's on a totally different subject, but the whole tax on tips thing, the reason that's not, human nature, people want to, like you said, people are going to look out for themselves. The reason that stuff like that doesn't work is all of a sudden you're going to see a lot of people, I'll hire you and work for tips. I'm going to pay you the same thing I have to pay if I'm a coffee shop owner. Okay. Instead of paying my barista, $14 an hour, you work for tips. Oh, look, you made $60 today. Now you don't have to pay taxes, and neither do I. So,
no, I can see that.
So it cuts out stuff like that. It makes it,
Sure.
the process to where, okay, they're contributing, they're happy, their tax dollars are coming to our country, not remittances to Mexico, which, again, like you, Mexico, but America first. And
Yeah.
I agree.
I hadn't thought about that with the tips thing. That does make sense. I think the heart was in the right place, but you're right. I could see how that could be abused.
If they do that, it sounds good, but it's too easy to abuse. If you do that within, I give you 1 to 2 months at most before there are problems.
Well, Rodney, I want to wrap up. Mustafa's giving me that we got to get off.
Sorry.
Thank you so much again for coming in today. This
Thanks
has
for
been
having me.
fantastic. I hope you got as much out of this as I did. It's great just having good conversation with good people, and we can always agree to disagree, right, Rodney?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Boom. Hello, this is Brian Smith, and thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more valuable content.